The red dust of Dust Hollow clung to everything like a curse. It settled in the creases of weathered faces, coated the warped wooden buildings that leaned against each other for support, and turned the afternoon sun into a hazy orange orb that seemed to glare down with judgment. This was a town that had been baked hard by the desert sun and made harder still by the hearts of those who called it home. Amina Washington wiped the sweat from her brow with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of flour across her dark skin. The kitchen of Murphy's saloon was sweltering, the cast-iron stove radiating heat that made the small space feel like the inside of a furnace. She'd been up since before dawn, kneading bread, stirring pots of beans, and trying to ignore the crude comments that drifted in from the dining room whenever she ventured out to serve. "Hey there, Mina," called out Jake Thornton, a regular who spent more time drinking than working his claim. "Why don't you bring that fine behind over here and sit on my lap a spell?" The other men at his table erupted in laughter, their yellow teeth gleaming in the lamplight. Amina kept her eyes down, setting the plates on the table with practiced efficiency. She'd learned long ago that responding only made things worse. "Leave the girl be," muttered old Pete from his corner table, though his protest was weak and quickly drowned out by more laughter. "Girl," Jake snorted. "Look at the size of her. That's a whole lot of woman right there. Probably eat a man's whole paycheck in groceries." Amina's jaw tightened, but she turned away, her worn calico dress swishing around her ankles. The dress had been her mother's once, back when the fabric was bright and new. Now it was faded and patched, but clean, always clean. Her mother had taught her that dignity came from within, not from what others thought of you. "Amina," barked Murphy from behind the bar. "Quit your dawdling." "We got hungry customers," she nodded, returning to the kitchen where she could breathe without the weight of their stares. Through the small window, she caught a glimpse of the street outside, dusty, desolate, with tumbleweeds rolling past like lost souls, somewhere beyond the edge of town. Her mother lay in their small shack, too weak to rise from her straw mattress. The fever had taken hold 3 months ago, and the doctor, when Amina could scrape together enough to pay him, said there wasn't much to be done except keep her comfortable. Every cent Amina earned went to her mother's care and their meager rent. She couldn't afford to lose this job, no matter how much the patron's words stung like scorpion tails. The saloon door swung open, bringing a gust of hot wind and sand. Amina glanced through the serving window and saw a man she didn't recognize. Tall, broad-shouldered, with sun-weathered skin and eyes the color of storm clouds. He moved with the easy grace of someone accustomed to long hours in the saddle, his spurs jingling softly as he found a table in the corner, away from the rowdy group near the bar. This was Cole Morgan, though Amina didn't know his name yet. He'd purchased the old Brennan Ranch 6 months ago, a small spread 15 miles outside of town where the desert gave way to scrub grass and a seasonal creek. The townsfolk knew little about him except that he paid in cash, kept to himself, and had the look of a man who'd seen too much killing. Cole removed his hat, revealing dark hair streaked with premature silver. His clothes were dusty but well-made, not fancy, but the kind of quality that spoke of someone who valued things that lasted. When Amina approached his table, he looked up at her with those gray eyes, and something in his gaze was different from the others. There was no leer, no dismissive glance, just a quiet acknowledgement of her presence. "What can I get you?" she asked, her voice carefully neutral. "Beef stew, if you have it. Coffee, black." His voice was deep, roughened by dust and disuse. She nodded and turned to go, but his voice stopped her. "Miss?" She paused, shoulders tensing. "Thank you." 2 simple words, but they hit her like cool water in the desert. When was the last time anyone had thanked her? She managed a small nod before retreating to the kitchen, unsettled by the interaction. As she ladled stew into a bowl, Amina found herself thinking about those gray eyes. There had been something in them, a sadness maybe, or a weariness that matched her own. She shook her head. She couldn't afford such foolish thoughts. Men like him didn't see women like her as anything more than servants, or worse. But when she brought his meal, He thanked her again, and when their fingers accidentally brushed as she set down the coffee cup, neither pulled away immediately. It was just a moment, so brief she wondered if she'd imagined it, before reality crashed back in. Well, Jake's voice cut through the air. Looks like the new rancher's got a taste for dark meat. Cole's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, but he kept eating, not acknowledging the comment. Amina fled back to the kitchen, her cheeks burning with humiliation. The rest of the evening passed in its usual rhythm. Crude jokes, spilled beer, Murphy's constant criticism. But Amina found her gaze drawn repeatedly to the quiet man in the corner. He ate slowly, methodically, and nursed his coffee long after the meal was done. When he finally stood to leave, he left coins on the table, the exact amount for his meal plus $1 extra. $1 was 2 days' wages for her. The following week, he returned. Same table, same order, same quiet presence that seemed to create a bubble of calm in the chaotic saloon. This became a pattern every Thursday, just as the sun was setting. Cole Morgan would appear. He never joined in the revelry, never laughed at the jokes made at Amina's expense. He simply ate, drank his coffee, and watched. What Amina didn't know was that Cole watched her specifically. He noted the grace with which she navigated the cramped space between tables, the way she kept her dignity intact despite the constant harassment. He saw the exhaustion in the slump of her shoulders and the worry that creased her brow when she thought no one was looking. He recognized in her the same bone-deep loneliness that had driven him to this God-forsaken corner of the territory. One Thursday evening, the harassment was worse than usual. A group of cowboys had just been paid and were deep in their cups. One of them, a mean-spirited man named Hank Sullivan, decided to make sport of Amina. "Dance for us, girl," he shouted, grabbing her wrist as she tried to pass. "Show us what you got under that tent you're wearing." Amina tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. The plate she was carrying crashed to the floor, beans splattering across the sawdust. Murphy cursed from behind the bar but made no move to intervene. "Please," Amina said quietly. "Let me go." "Or what?" Hank laughed, pulling her closer. The smell of whiskey on his breath made her stomach turn. "You gonna put a curse on me?" Before anyone could react, Cole was there. He didn't speak, didn't threaten. He simply placed his hand on Hank's wrist and squeezed. The cowboy yelped and released Amina, who stumbled backward. "I believe the lady asked you to let go," Cole said, his voice dangerously quiet. "This ain't your business, stranger." Hank snarled, but there was uncertainty in his eyes now. Cole had the look of a man who'd killed before and wouldn't hesitate to do so again. "I'm making it my business." The saloon had gone silent, everyone watching to see what would happen. After a long moment, Hank backed down, muttering curses under his breath. Cole turned to Amina, who was trembling slightly. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head, unable to find words. He bent down and began picking up the broken pieces of the plate. After a moment's hesitation, she knelt beside him, their hands working in tandem to clean the mess. "Thank you," she whispered. He met her eyes then, and something passed between them, an understanding, perhaps, or recognition of kindred spirits in a hostile world. But the moment was shattered by Murphy's angry voice. "Amina, quit making eyes at the customers and get back to work. That plate's coming out of your pay." Cole stood, helping her to her feet. For just a second, his hand lingered on her elbow, steadying her. Then he returned to his table, and she to her kitchen. But something had shifted. The other patrons were eyeing them both now, whispers starting to circulate. As Amina washed dishes that night, she thought about the warmth of his hand, the way he'd stood up for her when no one else would. It was dangerous to hope. She knew. In a town like Dust Hollow, certain lines weren't meant to be crossed, but for the first time in years, she felt something other than resignation stirring in her chest. Outside, Cole Morgan mounted his horse and rode toward his ranch, the stars beginning to emerge in the darkening sky. He thought about the woman with the sad eyes and gentle hands, about the strength it must take to endure what she did every day. He'd come to Dust Hollow to escape his past, to find solitude in the vast emptiness of the desert. He hadn't expected to find her, but some things he was learning couldn't be outrun, and maybe, just maybe, he was tired of trying. Cole began finding more reasons to come to town. What had been a weekly visit for supplies became twice, then 3 times a week. He'd buy things he didn't need, an extra bag of flour, more coffee than one man could drink, new horseshoes when his were perfectly fine. The storekeepers noticed but said nothing, taking his money with knowing looks. Amina noticed too, though she tried to pretend otherwise. She'd catch herself watching for him through the saloon window, her heart lifting despite herself when his familiar silhouette appeared. But she kept her distance, serving him with the same quiet efficiency she showed all customers. The incident with Hank Sullivan had set tongues wagging, and she couldn't afford more attention. Still, their eyes would meet across the crowded room, and in those brief moments, entire conversations seemed to pass between them. He saw her exhaustion, her worry. She saw his loneliness, his unspoken kindness. Neither spoke of these things, but the awareness grew between them like a living thing. One night in October, when the desert wind howled like a wounded animal and rain lashed against the windows, Amina's world tilted on its axis. She was walking home after her shift, head bent against the storm, when footsteps splashed behind her. Her spine stiffened, but she kept walking. The streets were empty, everyone huddled inside against the weather. "Where are you going in such a hurry?" The voice was slurred, aggressive. Tom Barrett, the banker's son, had been drinking at the saloon all evening. He'd made several attempts to corner her during her shift, growing more belligerent each time she politely declined his advances. "Home," she said, not turning around, walking faster. "Now that ain't friendly." His hand grabbed her shoulder, spinning her around. His face was flushed with drink and something uglier. "I'm trying to talk to you. Please, Mr. Barrett, I need to get home. My mother is sick." "Your mother can wait." He pushed her against the alley wall, his hands rough on her arms. "I've been watching you, swaying those hips around the saloon. You can't tell me you don't want it." Amina struggled, but he was stronger, pressing his body against hers. The rain soaked through her thin shawl, and she could taste fear metallic on her tongue. She opened her mouth to scream, but his hand clamped over it. "Make a sound, and I'll tell everyone you invited me. Who do you think they'll believe?" The truth of his words was more painful than his grip. In Dust Hollow, her word against a white man's was worth less than dust. Tears mixed with rain on her cheeks as she fought, her nails raking his face. Then suddenly, Tom was gone, ripped away from her with such force that he flew several feet before landing in the mud. Cole stood between them, rain streaming down his face, his expression murderous. "Touch her again and I'll kill you," he said, each word precise and deadly. Tom scrambled to his feet, wiping mud from his face. "You don't know what you're getting into. Morgan, this ain't your concern. I'm making it my concern." Cole's hand rested on his gun. A clear threat. "Get out of here before I forget you're not worth the bullet." For a moment, Tom looked like he might argue. Then he saw something in Cole's eyes that made him think better of it. He stumbled away, throwing one last venomous look over his shoulder. Cole turned to Amina, who was shaking against the wall. Without a word, he shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around her shoulders. It smelled of leather and tobacco and safety. "Let me take you home," he said quietly. She nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. He kept a respectful distance as they walked, but his presence was a shield against the darkness. When they reached her small shack on the outskirts of town, she finally found her voice. Would you like to come in, just for a moment, to dry off?" He hesitated, knowing the impropriety of it, the danger it could bring to both of them. But her eyes were pleading, and he found himself nodding. The inside of the shack was sparse but clean. A single room divided by a hanging blanket, behind which he could hear labored breathing. Amina lit a lamp with trembling fingers, the warm glow pushing back the shadows. "I'll make coffee," she said, needing something to do with her hands, while she busied herself at the small stove. Cole looked around. Everything spoke of poverty, but also of care. The floor was swept clean. Wildflowers sat in a cracked vase on the table, and books, precious and rare in a place like this, were stacked neatly on a shelf. "You read?" he asked, surprised. "My mother taught me." Amina's voice was soft. She was a house slave back in Georgia, before the war. The mistress taught her letters, and she taught me, said education was the only thing they couldn't take away from us. She handed him a cup of coffee, their fingers brushing again. This time, neither pulled away immediately. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." "She is." Amina's eyes darted to the curtain. She's dying." The words hung between them, stark and painful. Cole set down his coffee and did something that surprised them both. He took her hand in his. His calluses were rough against her work-worn palms, but his touch was gentle. "I'm sorry," he said simply. Amina looked at their joined hands, brown and white, intertwined, and felt something crack open inside her chest. "Why are you kind to me? Why wouldn't I be? You know why." She pulled her hand away, wrapping her arms around herself. "This town, these people, what happened tonight will be all over Dust Hollow by morning. They'll say I invited it, that I'm that kind of woman, and you being here." She trailed off, the implications clear. Cole was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "I stopped caring what people think a long time ago. Had to, in my line of work." "What was your line of work?" He met her eyes. "The kind that leaves a man with too much blood on his hands, and not enough soul left to wash it off." She should have been frightened, but instead, she felt a strange kinship. They were both outcasts in their own ways, both carrying wounds that wouldn't heal. "I should go," he said finally, standing. "But Amina, may I call you Amina?" She nodded. "I want you to know that you can send for me if you need help. Anytime, day or night. I'll come." "Why?" she asked again. This time he didn't answer directly. Instead, he said, "There's a place by Miller's Creek, about a mile north of town. Big cottonwood tree. Can't miss it. I water my horse there sometimes in the evenings, when the heat breaks." The invitation was subtle but clear. Amina's heart raced. "That's good to know. About the tree, I mean, for shade." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Yes, for shade." After he left, Amina sat in the darkness for a long time, his coat still around her shoulders. She knew she should be terrified of Tom's retaliation, of the town's gossip, of the dangerous feelings stirring in her chest. But all she could think about was the warmth of Cole's hand and the promise of a cottonwood tree. 3 days passed before she gathered the courage. She told her mother she was going to gather herbs for her fever, which wasn't entirely a lie. Feverfew did grow near the creek. The sun was setting as she approached the massive cottonwood, its leaves whispering secrets to the evening breeze. Cole was there, sitting on a fallen log, sketching in a leather-bound book. He looked up at her approach, and the smile that spread across his face made her momentarily forget to breathe. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. "I wasn't sure either," she admitted, settling beside him on the log, careful to maintain a proper distance. They talked as the stars emerged, about books and dreams, about the places they'd been and the places they'd like to go. She learned that he'd grown up in Missouri, that he'd fought in the war, though he didn't say which side, that he'd drifted west doing work he wasn't proud of until he'd saved enough to buy his ranch and try to find some peace. He learned that she loved to sing when no one was listening, that she dreamed of seeing the ocean someday, that she made up stories in her head during the long hours at the saloon to keep her spirit from breaking. "What are you drawing?" she asked eventually, gesturing to his book. He hesitated, then showed her. The page was covered with sketches, the desert landscape, his horse, the saloon. But most were of her profile as she served tables, her hands as she worked, the curve of her neck as she looked out the window. "Cole," she breathed, tracing one of the drawings with her finger. "These are beautiful." "You're beautiful," he said quietly. I know I shouldn't say it, but it's true. Not just, he gestured vaguely, but in here. He placed his hand over his heart. Where it counts. Tears sprang to her eyes. No one had ever called her beautiful before. The word had been weaponized against her, twisted into something shameful. But from his lips, it sounded like a prayer. I should go, she whispered, even as she leaned closer to him. This is dangerous. Everything worth doing is dangerous, he replied. Their first kiss happened there, under the cottonwood tree with the first stars as witnesses. It was gentle, tentative, a question asked and answered. When they pulled apart, both were breathing hard. I'm sorry, Cole started, but Amina pressed her fingers to his lips. Don't apologize. Not for that. Never for that. They began meeting regularly, always careful, always hidden. Sometimes by the creek, sometimes in a small canyon Cole had found while exploring. They would talk for hours, sharing pieces of themselves they'd never shown anyone else. And yes, they would kiss, each time a little longer, a little deeper, a little more dangerous. Cole began teaching her to draw, guiding her hand as she sketched. Amina would sing softly, old spirituals her mother had taught her, and he would close his eyes and listen like a man in church. In those stolen moments, the harsh realities of Dust Hollow fell away, and they were just two souls finding solace in each other. But reality always crept back in. The town's gossip mill was churning. People had noticed Cole's frequent trips, the way his eyes followed Amina in the saloon. Tom Barrett was spreading poison about that night in the rain, his version painting Amina as a woman of loose morals who'd tried to seduce him. Maybe we should stop, Amina said one evening, though the words felt like swallowing glass. Before someone gets hurt. Cole cupped her face in his hands. Someone's already hurt. You, every day in that place. Let me take you away from here. I can't leave my mother. Then we'll take her too. I have money saved. We could go to California or Oregon, somewhere we could just be people. The dream was so beautiful it made her chest ache, but she shook her head. She's too sick to travel, and even if she wasn't, Cole, there's nowhere in this country where what we have wouldn't be dangerous. Then we'll be dangerous together, he said fiercely. That night, under a desert moon that turned the sand to silver, he held her while she cried, for her mother, for herself, for the impossibility of their love. And when her tears were spent, he kissed her with a passion that spoke of desperation and defiance in equal measure. As she walked home, Amina carried the taste of him on her lips and the terrible, wonderful certainty that she was falling in love with a man she could never truly have. But for now, for these stolen moments beneath the stars, she would take what happiness she could find and hold it close against the darkness that was surely coming. The weeks that followed were the sweetest and most terrifying of Amina's life. She lived for their secret meetings, each stolen hour a treasure she hoarded against the bleakness of her daily existence. Cole had become her anchor, her reason to endure the cruel jokes and grabbing hands at the saloon. When things got bad, she would think of his gray eyes, his gentle touch, and somehow find the strength to keep going. Their relationship had deepened beyond mere attraction. In the hidden places where they met, they created their own world, one where the color of her skin didn't matter, where his violent past couldn't reach them, where they were simply Cole and Amina, two souls recognizing themselves in each other. One evening in late November, Cole led her to his ranch for the first time. He'd been hesitant to bring her there, knowing the risk. But a winter storm was brewing and their usual meeting spots would be too exposed. The ranch house was modest but well-built, with thick adobe walls and a wide porch that faced the sunset. Inside, it was sparse but clean, a man's place, functional and without frivolity, except for one corner where he'd hung some of his sketches. It's not much, he said, suddenly shy as she looked around. It's wonderful, Amina said, and meant it. After the cramped shack she shared with her mother, this felt like a palace. More than that, it felt like him, solid, unpretentious, quietly beautiful. He'd prepared dinner, a simple meal of beef stew and cornbread. But to Amina, it might as well have been a feast. They ate by the fire, talking softly. the intimacy of being truly alone together for the first time making them both nervous and exhilarated. "I want to show you something," Cole said after they'd finished eating. He led her to a chest in the bedroom, pulling out a folded piece of fabric. When he shook it out, Amina gasped. It was a dress, store-bought, made of soft blue cotton with tiny flowers embroidered on the collar. "Cole, I can't. Please." He pressed it into her hands. "I saw it in the general store and thought I wanted you to have something beautiful, something that's yours." Tears pricked her eyes. She clutched the dress to her chest, overwhelmed by the gesture. No one had ever given her anything so fine. "Try it on," he urged gently. "I'll wait outside." When she emerged, transformed in the new dress that fit as if made for her, Cole's breath caught. The lamplight cast a warm glow on her skin, and the blue brought out the amber flecks in her brown eyes. But it was the joy on her face that made her truly radiant. "You look," he started, then stopped, seemingly at a loss for words. "Like a real lady?" she suggested with a tremulous smile. "Like yourself," he corrected. "Like who you really are when the world isn't trying to make you small." The emotion in his voice undid her. She crossed to him, taking his face in her hands. "I love you," she whispered, the words escaping before she could stop them. His eyes closed as if in pain. "Amina, I know we can't. I know it's impossible. But I needed to say it, just once. I love you, Cole Morgan." He pulled her against him, burying his face in her hair. "God help me, I love you too, more than I've ever loved anything in my miserable life." They held each other as the storm broke outside, wind rattling the windows and rain drumming on the roof. In the circle of his arms, Amina felt safe in a way she never had before. She tilted her face up to his, and their lips met in a kiss that was different from all the others, deeper, hungrier, full of desperate need. When his hands tangled in her hair, when her fingers worked at the buttons of his shirt, neither pulled back. They'd been dancing around this moment for weeks, and now, with the storm raging outside and love declared between them, resistance crumbled. Cole lifted her gently, carrying her to his bedroom. "Are you sure?" he asked, setting her down beside the bed. "Amina, if we do this, I know what it means," she said softly. "I want this. I want you. Just once. I want to feel what it's like to be with someone who loves me." He undressed her slowly, reverently, as if unwrapping a precious gift. His hands trembled as they traced the curves that the world mocked but he worshipped. "You're so beautiful," he murmured against her skin. "So perfect." When they came together, it was with a tenderness that bordered on worship. Cole was gentle, patient, attentive to her every response. For Amina, who had only known roughness and contempt from men, his careful passion was a revelation. She gave herself to him completely, holding nothing back, and in return discovered pleasures she hadn't known existed. Afterward, they lay entwined, skin to skin, hearts gradually slowing. The storm had passed, leaving a profound quiet broken only by their breathing. "I wish we could stay like this forever," Amina whispered against his chest. "So do I." His arms tightened around her. "Run away with me. Tonight. We'll take your mother. Head north. I know people in Colorado who wouldn't care about us." She was quiet for so long he thought she might have fallen asleep. Then she said, "My mother couldn't survive the journey. She's barely holding on as it is, and even if she could—" She lifted her head to look at him. "I won't have you giving up everything for me. Your ranch, your peace, the life you've built. None of it means anything without you." "Don't say that." She pressed her fingers to his lips. "This place is the first home you've had in years. I won't be the reason you lose it." They made love again as dawn approached, this time with an urgency born of knowing their time was limited. Every touch, every kiss felt like a goodbye, though neither would voice it. When Amina finally dressed to leave, Cole caught her hand. "This isn't over," he said fiercely. "I won't let it be." She kissed him softly. "I'll treasure this night for the rest of my life. Thank you for showing me what love feels like." The journey back to town was the longest of her life. The new dress was carefully folded in a bundle. She couldn't risk being seen in it. As she walked, she felt the pleasant ache in her body, the lingering warmth of his touch, and knew that everything had changed. What she didn't know was that Tom Barrett had been watching Cole's ranch, nursing his grudge and his wounded pride. He'd seen her arrive, seen the lamplight in the bedroom window, seen her leave at dawn. By the time Amina reached home, he was already spreading the news. The consequences came swiftly. When Amina arrived at work that evening, Murphy was waiting with a face like thunder. "You're done here," he said without preamble. "I run a respectable establishment. Can't have the help acting like a common—" He bit off the word, but they both knew what he'd been about to say. "Mr. Murphy, please, I need this job. My mother—" "Should have thought of that before you went spreading your legs for that drifter." His piggy eyes gleamed with malicious satisfaction. "Tom Barrett told everyone what you've been up to. Nobody's gonna want you serving their food now." Amina held her head high as she untied her apron, refusing to let him see her cry. But inside, she was crumbling. Without this job, she had no way to pay for her mother's medicine, no way to keep a roof over their heads. The walk through the saloon felt endless. Conversations stopped as she passed, replaced by whispers and snickers. Someone muttered a slur. Another man made a crude gesture. By the time she reached the door, her dignity was in tatters. Outside, she nearly collided with Cole. He'd heard the news and come immediately, his face dark with fury. "Amina, I'm so sorry. This is my fault." "No." She gripped his hands, glancing around nervously. They were drawing stairs. "This isn't your fault. We both knew the risk. Come back to the ranch with me, both of you. I'll take care of you." "Cole, I can't." "You can." His voice was urgent. "I won't let them do this to you. You don't deserve their hate." A crowd was beginning to gather, drawn by the spectacle of Cole Morgan holding hands with a disgraced woman. Amina could feel their judgment like a physical weight. "You should go," she whispered. "Before they turn on you too. Let them try." He raised his voice, addressing the growing crowd. "Any of you have something to say about Miss Washington, you say it to me." The challenge hung in the air. A few men shifted restlessly, but none stepped forward. Cole's reputation as a dangerous man served him well. "That's what I thought." He turned back to Amina. "Please, come with me." For a moment, she wavered. The offer was so tempting. Safety, love, a life with a man who'd shown her what happiness felt like. But then she thought of her mother, too weak to be moved, and the price Cole would pay for harboring them. The town's displeasure was one thing. Their violence was another. "I need to think," she said finally. "Give me time." He clearly wanted to argue, but saw something in her face that stopped him. "I'll wait," he said. "However long it takes." As she walked away, Amina heard the crowd closing in behind her, their voices rising in outrage that Cole had defended her so publicly. She quickened her pace, the weight of their hatred driving her forward. At home, she found her mother awake, lucid for the first time in days. The older woman took one look at her daughter's face and opened her arms. Amina collapsed into them, sobbing out the whole story. Her love for Cole, their night together, the loss of her job. Her mother stroked her hair, humming softly. When Amina's tears were spent, she said, "Baby girl, love is the most powerful force in this world. It's also the most dangerous. The question you gotta ask yourself is whether it's worth the cost. How can love be worth losing everything?" "Sometimes," her mother said softly. "Losing everything is how we find out what really matters." That night, as Amina lay sleepless, she thought about Cole's offer. She thought about the dress hidden beneath her bed, about the sketches he'd drawn of her, about the way he'd made her feel beautiful and cherished and whole. She thought about the life they could have together, away from Dust Hollow's poisonous judgment. But she also thought about the violence that followed women like her who dared to love men like him. She thought about her mother, clinging to life by a thread. She thought about Cole's hard-won peace being shattered by their relationship. By dawn, she still didn't have an answer. All she knew was that she loved Cole Morgan with every fiber of her being. And that love might be the very thing that destroyed them both. 3 days after losing her job, Amina made her decision. With no income and her mother growing weaker, she had no choice but to accept Cole's offer. Pride was a luxury she could no longer afford. She wrapped her few belongings in a worn blanket and helped her mother to her feet. "We're going somewhere safe, Mama," she whispered, supporting the frail woman's weight. The journey to Cole's ranch took twice as long as usual, with frequent stops for her mother to rest. When they finally arrived, Cole was waiting on the porch, having spotted them from a distance, his face lit with relief and something deeper, a joy so pure it made Amina's heart ache. He helped them inside, settling her mother in the bedroom with a gentleness that brought tears to Amina's eyes. Within hours, he'd ridden to town and returned with a doctor, paying him triple his usual fee to ensure discretion. "Consumption," the doctor confirmed quietly. Pulling Cole aside, "Advanced stage. Keep her comfortable. That's all you can do now. Maybe a month, possibly 2. Cole relayed the news to Amina gently. She'd suspected as much, but hearing it confirmed was still a blow. He held her as she cried, his own eyes suspiciously bright. Life at the ranch fell into a rhythm. Amina tended her mother and kept house while Cole worked the land. In the evenings, they would sit together by the fire, her mother dozing in the bedroom while they talked quietly, or simply existed in comfortable silence. It was domestic in a way that felt both natural and miraculous. "I want to marry you," Cole said one evening, apropos of nothing. They were washing dishes side by side, such a mundane moment for such a momentous declaration. Amina's hand stilled in the soapy water. "Cole, I know what people will say. I know the law might not recognize it, but in the eyes of God, in our hearts, I want you to be my wife." He took her wet hands in his. "I already spoke to Father Miguel at the mission. He's willing." Father Miguel was known for his unconventional views, ministering to Mexicans and Indians with the same fervor he showed his white parishioners. Still, performing such a ceremony would put him at considerable risk. "Your reputation," Amina began. "Hang my reputation. I've lived my whole life worried about what people think. I'm done with that. The only opinion that matters to me is yours." Her mother, who'd been listening from the bedroom doorway, spoke up. "Child, that man loves you true. Don't let fear rob you of whatever happiness you can grab in this world." 2 weeks later, in the small chapel at the San Carlos Mission, Amina Washington became Amina Morgan in the eyes of God, if not the law. Father Miguel performed the ceremony at dawn, with only her mother and his housekeeper as witnesses. Amina wore the blue dress Cole had given her, wildflowers braided in her hair. Cole wore his best shirt and a look of fierce pride. "You may kiss your bride," Father Miguel said with a gentle smile. When Cole's lips met hers, Amina felt something settle in her chest, a rightness, a completion. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The backlash was swift and vicious. Word of the ceremony spread like wildfire. Some dismissed it as invalid, a mockery of the sacrament. Others saw it as an abomination that needed to be corrected. The ranch, once Cole's sanctuary, became a target. They found their cattle poisoned first, 5 head, lying bloated in the south pasture. A week later, someone set fire to the barn, though Cole managed to save the horses. Notes appeared nailed to fence posts. "Get out, race traitor." Words far uglier than those. "We should leave," Amina said after the 3rd incident, watching Cole board up a broken window. "This is escalating. This is our home," he replied stubbornly. "I won't let them drive us out." But she could see the toll it was taking. Dark circles appeared under his eyes from keeping watch at night. His hand never strayed far from his gun. The easy smile she loved became increasingly rare. Still, there were moments of light. Quiet mornings when they woke tangled together, her head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat. Afternoons when her mother felt well enough to sit on the porch, telling stories of her girlhood while Cole sketched and Amina mended clothes. Evenings when Cole would pull out his harmonica, playing old songs while Amina sang along. One night, as they lay together after making love, Amina traced the scars on his chest. "Tell me about these," she said softly. He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Knife fight in Tucson, bullet graze in Amarillo, another knife in San Antonio." His hand covered hers. "I wasn't a good man before I met you. You're a good man now. You make me want to be better." He kissed her forehead. "You make me believe I can be." Their hard-won peace shattered on a cold December morning. Amina woke to find Cole's side of the bed empty and cold. She found him on the porch, reading a letter, his face carved from stone. "What is it?" He handed her the paper. It was from the town council, signed by Mayor Hutchins and Judge Campbell. In formal language, it strongly encouraged Cole to reconsider his living arrangements and return to a state of Christian morality. The implicit threat was clear. "They're giving us a chance to leave quietly," Cole said. "If we don't..." He didn't need to finish. They both knew what came after warnings in a place like Dust Hollow. That afternoon, a delegation arrived. Mayor Hutchins, Judge Campbell, Reverend Price from the town church, and several prominent citizens. They sat stiffly in the parlor, refusing Amina's offer of coffee. "Mr. Morgan," the mayor began, "we've come to appeal to your better nature. What you're doing here. It isn't natural. It isn't right. What's not natural about loving my wife?" Cole's voice was dangerously quiet. "She's not your wife," Reverend Price interjected. "That ceremony was a blasphemy. No legal standing, no recognition in the eyes of proper society. I don't recall asking for society's recognition." Judge Campbell leaned forward. "Be reasonable. Morgan, you're a white man of property. You have a future here. Why throw it away for..." He glanced at Amina, who stood quietly by the wall. "Why complicate your life unnecessarily? Get out." Cole stood slowly. "Get off my land before I forget my manners." The mayor tried once more. "We're trying to help you, son. End this foolishness. Send the girl away. We'll forget this ever happened." "The girl," Cole said with deadly calm, "is my wife. And if any of you come here again with your threats and your righteousness, you'll leave feet first. Are we clear?" They filed out, but not before Reverend Price turned to Amina. "You've corrupted him. Girl, led him into sin with your wiles. His damnation is on your head." After they left, Amina found Cole in the bedroom, loading his rifles. "What are you doing?" "Getting ready. They'll be back, and not with words next time." She sat on the bed, watching him. "I won't be the reason you have to kill again. And I won't let them hurt you." He set the rifle aside, kneeling before her. "I need you to understand something. I've done terrible things in my life, things that wake me up at night. But loving you, that's the one pure thing I've ever done. I'll die before I let them take that from me." That night, her mother took a turn for the worse. Her breathing became labored, her skin burning with fever. Cole rode hell for leather to fetch the doctor, but they all knew it was time. "My girl," her mother whispered, gripping Amina's hand with surprising strength. "You listen to me. That man loves you true. Don't you dare give up on that love because the world says you should. You fight for it, you hear me?" "Yes, Mama." "And Cole," she turned to him, "you take care of my baby. You be the man she believes you are." "Yes, ma'am. You have my word." She passed as the sun rose, peaceful at the end. They buried her on a hill overlooking the valley, with wildflowers and a wooden cross Cole carved himself. Father Miguel came to say the words, despite the risk to himself. As they stood by the grave, Amina's tears finally spent. Cole wrapped his arms around her from behind. "What do you want to do?" he asked softly. "We can leave tonight, start fresh somewhere else." Amina looked out over the land, harsh and beautiful, unforgiving and magnificent. This place had shown them the worst of humanity, but had also given them each other. She thought of her mother's words, of the courage it took to love in a world that said their love was wrong. "No," she said finally. "This is our home. We stay and fight. Cole pressed a kiss to her temple. Then we fight together. As they walked back to the house, hand in hand, Amina felt a new resolve settling in her bones. The town wanted war? They would give them one worth remembering. But more than that, they would live, openly, proudly, defiantly. Their love would be their rebellion, their happiness their greatest revenge. The storm was coming. But for now, in this moment, they had each other. And that, Amina thought as Cole squeezed her hand, was worth any price they might have to pay. The morning after Christmas brought a sight that made Amina's blood run cold. In the center of town, swinging from the old oak tree where the county held its hangings, was an effigy. It was crude but recognizable. A stuffed figure in a dress, face painted brown, a noose around its neck. A sign pinned to its chest read, "This is what happens to those who forget their place." Cole had ridden to town for supplies and saw it first. By the time he returned to the ranch, his face was granite. His jaw clenched so tight Amina could see the muscle jumping. "Pack your things," he said without preamble. "We're leaving tomorrow." "Cole!" "No." He slammed his fist on the table, making her jump. It was the first time he'd shown real anger in front of her. "I won't have you in danger because of my stubbornness. We're going." But Amina had inherited her mother's steel spine. "Running won't solve anything. There'll be another dust hollow wherever we go. Maybe, but at least you'll be alive to see it." That night, they held each other desperately, making love with an urgency born of fear and defiance. Afterward, as Cole slept, Amina lay awake planning. She wouldn't run, not anymore, but she wouldn't let Cole fight her battles either. The next morning, she put on her best dress, the blue one Cole had given her, fixed her hair carefully, and walked into town alone. Cole had gone to check the fence line and wouldn't discover her absence for hours. The main street fell silent as she passed. Women pulled their children inside. Men stopped their conversations to stare. But Amina kept her head high, walking straight to Hutchins's general store. The mayor was behind the counter when she entered. His face went red, then purple. "You've got some nerve showing your face here. I've come to talk," Amina said calmly, "about a peaceful solution. The only solution is for you to leave town. Today." "I can't do that." She met his eyes steadily. "This is my home now. My mother is buried here. My husband's ranch is here. We've done nothing wrong except love each other." "Nothing wrong?" His voice rose. "You've corrupted a good man, turned him against his own kind. That's wrong in the eyes of God and nature both." "According to whom?" Amina challenged. "Your God, because the God my mother taught me about preached love and acceptance. As for nature," she gestured to herself. "I'm standing here, aren't I? Breathing, thinking, feeling. If I was so unnatural, wouldn't nature have struck me down by now?" A crowd had gathered outside, peering through the windows. Mayor Hutchins seemed aware of them, his political instincts warring with his prejudice. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "Peace. We'll keep to ourselves. Come to town only when necessary. In return, you leave us alone. No more threats. No more vandalism. Live and let live." "And if we refuse?" Amina's voice hardened. "Then you'll have to kill us, both of us, and I promise you, my husband won't go quietly. How many good men of Dust Hollow are you willing to lose to satisfy your hate?" It was a gamble, invoking Cole's capacity for violence, but she'd learned that sometimes fear was the only language men like Hutchins understood. The mayor was saved from answering by a commotion outside. Cole had arrived, his horse lathered with sweat from the hard ride. He burst through the door, eyes wild until they found her. "Amina, what the hell?" "I'm negotiating our future," she said calmly. "Mayor Hutchins and I were just discussing terms of peaceful coexistence." Cole looked between them, his hand hovering near his gun, but something in Amina's posture, the straight spine, the lifted chin, made him pause. This was her fight, her stand. He moved to her side, a silent support. "Your woman's got sand." "Morgan," Hutchins said grudgingly. "More than I gave her credit for." "My wife," Cole corrected, "has more courage than any 10 men I've known." They left without a resolution, but Amina felt something had shifted. She'd shown them she wouldn't be cowed, wouldn't hide. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. That evening, as they prepared dinner together, Cole said, "That was foolish, what you did today." "Yes," she agreed. "And brave." "That too." He pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. "You terrify me sometimes, you know that?" "Good, that makes us even." For a week, an uneasy truce held. They came to town unmolested, though the stares and whispers followed them. Some faces showed curiosity now, along with hostility. A few of the Mexican families nodded politely. The Chinese launderer actually smiled. Then Tom Barrett decided he'd waited long enough for his revenge. It happened on a moonless night. Amina woke to the acrid smell of smoke and Cole shaking her roughly. "Fire! Get out!" The barn was fully engulfed, flames licking at the house's eastern wall. Cole raced to free the horses while Amina grabbed what she could carry. Working together, they managed to contain the fire before it consumed the house, but the barn was a total loss. As dawn broke over the charred ruins, they found the message burned into the surviving fence. "Next time you burn with it." "That's it," Cole said, his voice deadly quiet. "I'm going to kill him." "No." Amina caught his arm. "That's what they want. An excuse to hang you legally." "Then what? We just let him terrorize us? We get proof, and we get help." Help came from an unexpected source. Father Miguel arrived that afternoon with someone Amina had never seen before, a young white woman with intelligent eyes and an Eastern accent. "This is Miss Catherine Winters," the priest explained. "She's a journalist from Philadelphia, writing about life in the territories." Catherine stepped forward, offering her hand to Amina without hesitation. "I've heard about your situation. I'd like to help, if you'll let me." Over coffee, Catherine explained that she'd come west to document the reality of frontier life, particularly the experiences of those society overlooked women, minorities, the poor. The story of an interracial couple standing against a town's prejudice was exactly what her readers needed to hear. "Publicity is protection," she said. "It's harder to lynch someone when the whole country is watching." Cole was skeptical, but Amina saw the wisdom in it. They agreed to let Catherine interview them, photograph the ranch, document their daily lives. Over the next weeks, Catherine became a frequent visitor. She was fascinated by everything: their love story, Amina's strength, Cole's transformation from gunslinger to rancher. She took photographs with her bulky camera, wrote pages of notes, and slowly became a friend. "You know what strikes me most?" Catherine said one evening as they sat on the porch. "How ordinary you are. I mean that is the highest compliment. You're just two people in love, trying to build a life together. The fact that anyone finds that threatening is the real story here." Her presence had an unexpected effect on the town. Some were flattered to have a big city journalist among them and tried to present their best faces. Others were nervous about how they'd be portrayed. The open hostility diminished, replaced by watchful waiting. But Tom Barrett wasn't one to be deterred by some Eastern woman with a notebook. His next attack was more personal. Amina was alone at the ranch, Cole having gone to help a neighbor with branding. She was hanging laundry when Barrett appeared, drunk and mean. "Thought you were smart, didn't you?" he slurred, advancing on her. "Getting that newspaper woman here, but she's leaving soon. And then what'll protect you?" Amina backed toward the house, calculating the distance to Cole's rifle. "Mr. Barrett, you need to leave, now!" "Or what? You'll get your man to shoot me?" He laughed bitterly. "Maybe I should take what he took from me. Show him how it feels to have another man's hands on his woman." He lunged for her, but Amina was ready. She swung the heavy iron pot she'd grabbed, catching him in the temple. He went down hard, blood pooling beneath his head. For a terrifying moment, she thought she'd killed him. Then he groaned, stirring slightly. She tied him up with laundry rope and waited for Cole to return. The sheriff, summoned reluctantly, had no choice but to arrest Barrett for attempted assault. with Catherine there documenting everything. He couldn't sweep it under the rug as he might have preferred. "You've made a powerful enemy," the sheriff warned as he loaded the semi-conscious Barrett into his wagon. "His family's got money and influence. We've got something better," Amina replied. "The truth." That night, as they lay in bed, Cole marveled at her courage. "You could have killed him." "I would have, if necessary." She turned to face him. "I won't be a victim. Cole, not ever again. I know." He kissed her softly. "God help me, that might be what I love most about you." Catherine's first article appeared in the Philadelphia Inquirer 3 weeks later. It was picked up by papers across the country, sparking debates about race, love, and justice in the American West. Letters poured in, some supportive, many not, but all proof that their story had touched a nerve. In Dust Hollow, the publicity had a chilling effect on the worst of the troublemakers. Nobody wanted to be the next Tom Barrett, portrayed in newspapers as a drunken coward who attacked defenseless women. But Amina knew this was just a respite, not a resolution. The hate hadn't gone away. It had just gone underground, waiting for the spotlight to move on. "What happens when Catherine leaves?" she asked Cole one night. "We keep fighting," he said simply. "Day by day, until they get tired, or we do. And if we get tired first," he was quiet for a moment, "then we'll rest. And when we're ready, we'll fight some more. That's what love is, isn't it? Not giving up, even when you want to." Amina thought of her mother's words, of the courage it took to love in a hostile world. She thought of the burned barn they were slowly rebuilding, of the land that was beginning to feel like home, of the man beside her who'd given up his old life for their new one. "Yes," she said, threading her fingers through his. "That's exactly what love is." Outside, a coyote howled at the distant mountains, its cry both mournful and defiant. Amina listened to it and understood. Sometimes you had to howl at the darkness, just to prove you were still alive. The morning Catherine Winters left Dust Hollow, she pressed a telegram address into Amina's hands. "If things get bad, wire me immediately. The power of the press isn't nothing." Amina hugged her. This unexpected ally, who'd become a true friend. "Thank you for everything." "Thank you," Catherine replied. "You've shown me what real courage looks like." With their guardian angel gone, the town's restraint began to fray. It started small, supplies ordered from the general store mysteriously lost. The doctor suddenly too busy to make house calls. But Amina and Cole had learned to be self-sufficient, treating these inconveniences as mere annoyances. They were in town on a supply run when everything changed. Cole was loading the wagon while Amina waited, trying to ignore the hostile stares. A young boy, perhaps 10 years old, approached her hesitantly. "Ma'am," he said, glancing around nervously. "My ma wanted me to give you this." He pressed a small bundle into her hands and ran off before she could respond. Inside the cloth was fresh bread and a note. "Not everyone agrees with them. Stay strong. A friend." It was the first crack in the town's united front, and it gave Amina hope. That night, as they prepared for bed, Cole seemed restless. He kept checking the windows, hand never far from his gun. "What is it?" Amina asked. "Something's coming. I can feel it." His instincts proved correct. Near midnight, they heard horses, many of them, moving fast. Cole was already dressed and armed when the riders surrounded the house. "Morgan!" Mayor Hutchins's voice rang out. "Come out. We need to talk. Talk through the door." Cole called back. "State your business." "Tom Barrett's dead. Died from complications of that head wound your woman gave him. His family wants justice." Amina's blood went cold. She'd known Barrett was hurt, but dead. "It was self-defense," Cole said. "The sheriff knows that. The sheriff's not in charge anymore. Send the woman out, and you can leave peacefully. That's the only deal you're getting. Go to hell. Have it your way." The first torch arced through the air, landing on the porch, then another, and another. Fire began to crawl up the walls they'd just finished repairing. "Out the back," Cole commanded, grabbing his rifle. "To the barn." They slipped out into the darkness as smoke began to fill the house. In the barn, Cole saddled their horses with practiced efficiency, while Amina gathered what supplies she could. "We have to leave," she said, coughing from the smoke. "Cole, we can't fight them all." "I know." His face was grim as he helped her mount. "But I'll be damned if we run like criminals." They burst from the barn at full gallop, Cole firing over the mob's heads to scatter them. Shouts and gunfire erupted behind them, but the darkness was their ally. They rode hard toward the mountains, the glow of their burning home lighting the sky behind them. They rode until the horses couldn't go further. Finally, stopping in a box canyon Cole knew from his wandering days. As dawn broke, they looked at each other, smoke-stained, exhausted. Everything they'd built together reduced to ash. "I'm sorry," Amina whispered. "This is my fault. If I hadn't hit Barrett, you defended yourself." "Don't you dare apologize for that." Cole pulled her close. "We're alive. That's what matters." But survival meant decisions. They had little food, less money, and nowhere to go. Cole knew of hideouts from his outlaw days, but that meant returning to a life he'd tried to leave behind. "There's a place," he said reluctantly. "Adobe Wells. It's a trading post, sort of. Run by a man named Dutch Henry. He doesn't ask questions if your money's good." "And if our money's not good?" Cole's silence was answer enough. The journey to Adobe Wells took 3 days through harsh country. They conserved water, rationed food, and took turns keeping watch. On the second night, huddled together for warmth, Amina asked, "Do you regret it? Us?" "Never." His answer was immediate and fierce. "I'd burn 100 houses before I'd regret loving you." Adobe Wells was exactly as rough as Cole had warned. A collection of sun-baked buildings around a muddy well, populated by outlaws, drifters, and others society had rejected. But here, their relationship raised no eyebrows. Harder people had stranger stories. Dutch Henry, a massive bearded man with calculating eyes, remembered Cole. "Heard you'd gone respectable. Guess that didn't take." "I need work," Cole said simply, "and a place for my wife to stay safe." Dutch's gaze slid to Amina, assessing. "Why, huh?" "Well, I don't judge. You can have the shack out back. As for work," he smiled, showing gold teeth. "How do you feel about your old profession?" Cole tensed, but Amina touched his arm. "What kind of work?" "Protection. Goods coming up from Mexico sometimes need extra security. Technically legal, mostly." It was a devil's bargain, but they had few options. Cole took the job, riding out with rough men while Amina made their shack livable and helped around the trading post. It was a harder life than the ranch, but it was life. One evening, a month into their exile, unexpected visitors arrived. Father Miguel, travel-worn but determined, accompanied by someone else, a tall black man in a cavalry uniform. "Sergeant William Johnson," he introduced himself, shaking Cole's hand firmly. 10th Cavalry, Buffalo Soldiers." Amina gasped. She'd heard of them, black soldiers serving on the frontier, proving their worth despite prejudice. "Father Miguel found me," Johnson explained. "Told me your story. I've faced my share of towns like Dust Hollow. Thought you might need some help." Over dinner, they learned that Johnson was stationed at Fort Bayard but had taken leave to track them down. "There's a community near the fort," he said. "Mixed folks, Mexican, Indian, some black families, even a few whites who don't care about color. You could start over there." "Why would you help us?" Cole asked, ever suspicious. Johnson looked at Amina. "Because everyone deserves a chance to live free, and because—" He smiled slightly. "I've got a Mexican wife myself. I know what it's like to love across lines." Hope, that dangerous emotion Amina had tried to suppress, bloomed in her chest. "Is it really possible? A place where we could just be?" "It's not paradise," Johnson warned. "There's still prejudice, still challenges, but there's also possibility, community, a chance to build something lasting." Cole was torn. The offer was tempting, but it meant trusting again, hoping again. "I've got obligations here, work I've contracted for." "I'll handle Dutch," Father Miguel said quietly. "I have some influence. even here. That night, as they lay on their narrow bed in the shack, Amina and Cole talked until dawn about dreams deferred and new possibilities, about the child Amina suspected she was carrying but hadn't yet confirmed, about the life they wanted versus the life they'd been living. "I'm tired of running," Cole said finally. "Tired of fighting just to exist." "Then let's stop," Amina said. "Let's go where we can build again. Where our—" She placed his hand on her still flat stomach. "Where our child can grow up seeing love, not hate." Cole's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "Amina, are you—" "I think so. I'm almost certain." He kissed her with desperate tenderness, tears on both their faces. A child, a future, a reason to hope despite everything. 3 days later, they left Adobe Wells with Sergeant Johnson and Father Miguel. Dutch Henry, surprisingly, wished them well. "You're a damn fool, Morgan," he said, "but I respect a man who chooses love over sense." The journey to Fort Bayard took a week. As they drew closer, the landscape changed, still desert, but softer somehow. And the people they passed were different too. A Mexican farmer waved from his field. A group of buffalo soldiers nodded respectfully. A white rancher and his Apache wife shared water at a stream. "It's not perfect," Johnson said, noting their wonder. "But folks here are too busy surviving to waste energy on hate." They reached the community officially called Tolerance, though most just called it Town. As the sun set, it wasn't much to look at. A main street, a general store, a small church, scattered houses and farms. But to Amina and Cole, it looked like hope. An older black woman named Mrs. Sarah Washington, no relation, she assured them with a laugh, offered them lodging while they got settled. "Johnson sent word you were coming. We've been preparing." That first night in a real bed, in a house where they were welcome. Amina wept for their losses, their struggles, but mostly for the possibility of peace at last. "We did it," she whispered to Cole. "We survived." "We did more than that," he replied, hand resting protectively over her belly. "We won." The next morning, they woke to the sound of normal life, children playing, neighbors calling greetings, the everyday miracle of people simply living. No angry mobs, no burning crosses, just existence without apology. At breakfast, Mrs. Washington told them about available land, work opportunities, the midwife who could help with Amina's pregnancy. "It ain't easy here," she warned. "But it's fair. You work hard, treat folks right, and they'll do the same." Walking through town later, Cole and Amina drew some curious looks but no hostility. At the general store, the owner, a gruff German immigrant, treated them like any other customers. At the church, Reverend Martinez, a Mexican priest, welcomed them warmly. "This feels like a dream," Amina said as they stood on a hill overlooking the valley. "Like I'm going to wake up back in Dust Hollow." Cole wrapped his arms around her from behind, hands resting on her belly. "It's real. We're home." And for the first time in so long, Amina believed it. They'd found their place, not perfect, but possible. A place where their love wasn't a scandal, but simply another thread in the complex tapestry of frontier life. As the sun set over their new beginning, Amina thought of her mother's words. Love is the most powerful force in this world. She'd been right. Love had led them through fire and hatred, through exile and despair, to this moment of grace. Tomorrow would bring challenges, building a house, establishing a farm, preparing for their child. But tonight, standing in Cole's arms in a place where they could simply be themselves, Amina felt rich beyond measure. "I love you," she said. Words that had once been dangerous, now flowing free. "I love you too," Cole replied. "Always." Intolerance. That was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Life intolerance had given them 2 months of peace when the past came calling. Cole was working on their new cabin's foundation when he saw the dust cloud on the horizon. Too many riders to be friendly. His blood ran cold as he recognized the lead figure. Sheriff Watson from Dust Hollow, accompanied by a dozen armed men. "Amina!" he shouted. "Running for the house. Get to Mrs. Washington's place, now! But Amina, now visibly pregnant, stood her ground on the porch. No more running. Remember? The riders thundered into their yard, Watson dismounting with an arrest warrant in his hand. Cole Morgan, you're under arrest for the murder of Tom Barrett and destruction of property. You'll come back to Dust Hollow to stand trial. That's outside your jurisdiction. Sheriff? A strong voice called out. Sergeant Johnson emerged from behind the cabin. His cavalry unit spread out behind him. This is federal territory. You've got no authority here. Watson's face darkened. This is a matter of justice. That woman killed a man, and Morgan helped her escape. I've read the reports, Johnson said calmly. Self-defense, clear as day. Now, I'm going to ask you once to leave. After that, I'll consider you hostile invaders in federal territory. The tension stretched taut. Watson's men shifted nervously, calculating odds against trained cavalry. Misses. Washington appeared with several townspeople, Mexican farmers, black families, even some whites, all armed, all standing with Cole and Amina. This how it is then? Watson spat. Decent folks protecting criminals and race traders? Decent folks protecting their own, Reverend Martinez said, stepping forward. This man and woman are part of our community now. You want them, you go through all of us. For a moment, violence seemed inevitable. Then one of Watson's deputies spoke up, a young man barely out of his teens. Sheriff, maybe we should go. This ain't worth dying for. Watson's jaw worked furiously, but he was outnumbered and outgunned. This isn't over. Morgan. That woman's crime won't go unpunished. The only crime, Amina said, speaking for the first time, was thinking we'd find justice in Dust Hollow. We found it here instead. After they left, the community gathered in the church. The confrontation had shaken everyone, reminding them that hate could reach even here. They'll be back, Cole said grimly, with more men or lawyers or some other way to cause trouble. Then we'll be ready, Johnson replied. I'm extending my leave, stationing some men nearby. But Cole, you need to understand, this might never end, not completely. That night, unable to sleep, Cole and Amina sat outside watching the stars. Her hand rested on her swollen belly, feeling the baby move. I brought this danger here, Cole said. To these good people. We brought hope here too. Amina countered. Did you see how they stood up for us? Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. That's what we're building. A place where people protect each other. A week later, unexpected help arrived. Catherine Winters rode into town with a lawyer from Santa Fe, a sharp-dressed man named Harrison Clark. I've been following your story, Clark explained. What's happening here is bigger than just you two. It's about whether the law protects everyone or just some. I'd like to represent you. Pro bono. He'd brought documents, witness statements, even a letter from the territorial governor expressing concern about vigilante justice. We're going to make it legally impossible for them to touch you, he promised. As her pregnancy advanced, Amina found herself embraced by the women of tolerance. They brought food, shared advice, and included her in their gatherings. For the first time in her life, she had real friends, women who saw her as a person, not a curiosity or threat. One evening, while Cole was out with Johnson's men on patrol, Amina felt the first pains, misses. Washington sent for the midwife while the other women rallied around. The labor was long and difficult, fear mixing with pain. What if something went wrong? What if the baby? You're strong. The midwife, a Mexican woman named Rosa, assured her, your baby is strong. Push. Cole arrived as the sun was rising, just in time to hear the first cry of their child. He burst into the room, wild-eyed with worry, only to stop short at the sight of Amina holding a bundle of blankets. Come meet your daughter, Amina whispered, tears streaming down her face. The baby was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a shock of dark hair, skin the color of coffee with cream. Cole took her with shaking hands, his tough guy facade crumbling entirely. She's beautiful, he choked out, just like her mama. They named her Hope. It seemed fitting. The news of Hope's birth spread through town like wildfire. People brought gifts, hand-sewn clothes, carved toys, practical things for new parents. Even some who'd been standoffish before seemed to soften at the sight of the innocent child. But their joy was tempered by news from Clark. Watson's been stirring up trouble. He's got some judge in Dust Hollow issuing warrants, trying to make this a federal case. We're fighting it, but we might have to run again. Cole finished. Not run. Relocate strategically. I have contacts in California, Oregon, places where mixed families are more accepted. You could start fresh, really fresh this time. That night, as baby Hope slept between them, Cole and Amina talked quietly about the future. I'm tired of strategic relocations, Amina said. This is our home. These are our people. Hope was born here. And if staying puts her in danger, it was the one argument that could sway her. Amina looked at their sleeping daughter, so small and vulnerable, and felt her resolve waver. Their dilemma was interrupted by commotion outside. Riders again, but this time from the opposite direction. Cole grabbed his gun, but Johnson's voice called out, "Stand down, they're friendly." The lead rider was a distinguished black man in an expensive suit. He dismounted and approached with the confidence of someone used to authority. "Mr. Morgan, Mrs. Morgan, I'm Robert Church from Memphis. I represent a coalition of businessmen and civil rights advocates. We've been following your case." Over coffee, Church explained his proposal. We're building something new in several cities, communities where racial mixing isn't just tolerated but protected. We need pioneers, people willing to stand up and be counted. Your story has inspired many. We'd like to help you, whether here or elsewhere. What kind of help? Cole asked suspiciously. Legal support, financial backing if needed, connections to sympathetic politicians and journalists. The world is changing, slowly but surely. We want to make sure couples like you are on the right side of that change. It was overwhelming, going from outcasts to symbols of something larger. Amina looked at Cole, seeing her own mix of hope and uncertainty reflected in his eyes. We need time to think, she said finally. That night, a storm rolled in from the mountains, lightning illuminating the desert in stark flashes. Hope fussed, and Amina walked her around their small cabin, singing softly. Cole watched them from the bed, his heart so full it hurt. What are you thinking? Amina asked, settling back beside him with the now quiet baby. I'm thinking I never expected this, he admitted. Any of it. Love, a family, people wanting to help instead of hurt us. It feels too good to be real. Maybe that's just what grace looks like, Amina suggested. After all we've been through, maybe we're due some goodness. A knock at the door interrupted them. Cole answered cautiously to find a young woman, Mexican by appearance, holding a crying infant. Please, she gasped. My husband, he's hurt. They said you'd help. Without hesitation, they brought her inside. Her husband, she explained, was a white man who'd been beaten by his own family for marrying her. He was hiding in an arroyo, too injured to move. Cole and Johnson's men found him and brought him back for treatment. As Rosa tended his wounds, the young couple's story emerged. Another mixed marriage, another town's hatred, another desperate flight to tolerance. See, Amina said to Cole later, this is why we stay. Not just for us, but for them, for everyone who needs what we're building here. The next morning, Church was preparing to leave when a telegram arrived. Watson had been removed from office, charged with corruption and abuse of power. The witnesses Clark had gathered, combined with Catherine's published articles, had turned public opinion. Dust Hollow's town council, facing economic boycotts and territorial intervention, had sacrificed him to save themselves. It's not total victory, Clark warned, but it means they can't touch you legally anymore. Church shook Cole's hand firmly. The offer stands, whenever you're ready, but I think you've already found your place. Keep building here. Show the world what's possible. As the delegation rode away, tolerance returned to its quiet rhythm, but something had changed. The town felt more solid somehow, more permanent. They'd faced down the past and won, if not completely, then enough to matter. That evening, there was an impromptu celebration in the church. Music filled the air. Mexican guitars, black spirituals, even some Irish fiddle. Cultures blending, creating something new and beautiful. Cole danced with Amina. Hope cradled between them, around them. Other mixed couples danced too, along with everyone else who'd chosen community over division. "Your curves still drive me wild," Cole whispered in her ear, echoing words from what felt like a lifetime ago. Amina laughed, the sound free and joyous. "Even with baby weight?" "Especially with baby weight. You've never been more beautiful." They swayed together as the music played on, their daughter safe between them, their community around them, their future finally their own to shape. It wasn't the life they'd planned, but it was the life they'd fought for, and that made it all the sweeter. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly under star-filled skies. Somewhere out there, hate and prejudice still existed, but here intolerance, love had built a fortress, one family at a time, one choice at a time. And for tonight, that was more than enough. It was everything. 5 years had passed since that night of celebration. Hope was now a bright, curious child who ran through the streets of tolerance with a pack of other children, Mexican, black, native, and mixed like herself. The sight that would have caused riots in Dust Hollow was simply everyday life here. Cole had built their cabin into a proper house, with a wide porch where Amina sold her baked goods to travelers. Her reputation had spread along the frontier. People detoured through tolerance just for her pies and bread. The blue dress he'd given her so long ago hung in their wardrobe, carefully preserved, a reminder of where they'd started. On this particular morning, Cole was teaching Hope to ride while Amina watched from the porch, her hands resting on her belly where their second child grew. The peace was shattered by a lone rider approaching fast. "Cole Morgan," the rider called out. "I have a message from Dust Hollow." Cole's hand instinctively went to his gun, but the rider raised his hands peacefully. "Not trouble, sir. Good news, actually." He handed over a letter with an official seal. Amina joined them as Cole read, his expression cycling through surprise, disbelief, and something like vindication. "They want us to come back," he said finally. "The town council of Dust Hollow is officially apologizing for their past mistakes and inviting us to return. They're even offering compensation for the burned property." The rider, a young man who couldn't have been more than 20, shifted uncomfortably. "My pa's on the council now. Ma'am, he said to tell you, things have changed. There's other mixed families in town now. A black doctor even opened a practice. People are different." After the rider left, Cole and Amina sat on their porch, watching Hope chase butterflies in the yard. "Do you want to go back?" Cole asked carefully. Amina was quiet for a long moment. "Part of me wants to see it, to walk down that main street with my head high, with you and our children, and show them they didn't break us." She turned to him. "But this is our home now." "Our real home." That evening, they called a family meeting. At 5, Hope was old enough to understand some of what they discussed. "Before you were born," Amina explained gently. "Mama and Daddy lived in another town, but the people there weren't kind to us because Daddy has white skin and Mama has brown skin." Hope frowned, looking between her parents. "That's silly. Skin is just skin." "Yes, baby, it is, but not everyone understands that yet." "Are we going to move there?" Hope asked, worry creeping into her voice. "I don't want to leave. Maria is teaching me Spanish, and Mr. Chen promised to show me how to write Chinese letters, and—" "No, sweetheart," Cole assured her. "We're staying right here. This is our home." They wrote back to Dust Hollow, thanking them for the apology but declining the invitation. Cole added a postscript. "We've found our place, but we're glad you're finding your way to being better. That's all we ever wanted." A month later, unexpected visitors arrived. A small wagon train of families, 3 couples and their children, all mixed race, all seeking sanctuary. "We heard about tolerance," one woman explained. holding a toddler, about how people can just live here. Is it true? It's true, Amina confirmed, remembering her own desperate arrival. Come in. Rest. You're safe now. The town embraced the newcomers as they had embraced others. Cole and Amina found themselves unofficial ambassadors, helping the new families settle in, sharing their story, offering hope to those who'd thought they'd never find acceptance. One evening, as Amina was closing up her bakery stall in town, an older white woman approached hesitantly. She was well-dressed, clearly from money, and looked deeply uncomfortable. Mrs. Morgan, I'm Eleanor Barrett, Tom's mother. Amina's blood chilled. She glanced around for Cole, but he was at home with Hope. I'm not here to cause trouble, Eleanor said quickly. I'm here to apologize, and to thank you. Thank me? Amina couldn't hide her shock. My son was not a good man. I knew it. His father knew it. But we made excuses, protected him. If you hadn't defended yourself, he might have hurt other women, killed someone, even... Tears rolled down her weathered cheeks. His death was a tragedy, but it was a tragedy of his own making. I'm sorry for the pain my family caused you. She pressed an envelope into Amina's hands and left before Amina could respond. Inside was a substantial bank draft and a note. For your children's education. May they grow up in a better world than we made. That night, Amina told Cole about the encounter. They sat in wondering silence at the strange turns life could take. People can change, Amina said finally. Not all of them, not completely, but some. You changed me. Cole replied, pulling her close. Made me believe I could be something more than a gunslinger with blood on his hands. We changed each other. As the years passed, tolerance grew. The railroad came through, bringing new opportunities and new people. Cole served a term as sheriff, using his past experience to keep the peace. Amina's bakery expanded into a proper restaurant, employing several women who, like her, had fled other places. Hope grew tall and strong, equally comfortable in English, Spanish, and Chinese, a true child of the frontier melting pot. Their son, James, born healthy despite Amina's fears, showed Cole's artistic talents, sketching everything he saw. One day, when Hope was 15, she came home from school troubled. Mama, Daddy, we were reading about the old days in history class, about how people used to be treated. It made me think, what you went through. I never really understood how brave you were. Cole and Amina exchanged glances. They'd protected their children from the worst of their story, wanting them to grow up unburdened by that hatred. We did what we had to do, Cole said simply. For love, for family, for the future. Amina added. For you and James and all the children who deserve to grow up in a better world. Hope hugged them both fiercely. I'm proud to be your daughter, proud of our family. That evening, Catherine Winters arrived for one of her periodic visits. She was older now, her hair streaked with gray, but still sharp and full of stories from the wider world. Mixed marriages are legal in more states now, she reported over dinner. Not everywhere, not easily, but progress is happening. And stories like yours, they're part of what's changing minds. She'd brought copies of her latest book, a collection of frontier love stories, with Cole and Amina's featured prominently. You've inspired more people than you know, she said. Letters come in from couples who found courage in your story. Later, as the extended family gathered on the porch, Cole and Amina, their children, chosen family like Mrs. Washington and Sergeant Johnson, now retired and living in tolerance. New friends and old. Amina reflected on their journey. From that sweltering kitchen in Dust Hollow to this moment of peace and plenty. From isolation to community. From fear to freedom. The road had been hard, sometimes brutal, but it had led them here. What are you thinking? Cole asked, noticing her distant expression. About curves, she said with a smile. How the curves in the road we couldn't see around led us to places we never imagined. He laughed, understanding immediately. Your curves still drive me wild, he whispered, their private joke now worn smooth with years of love. "And you're still the gunslinger who stole my heart," she whispered back. Hope pretended to gag. "You two are embarrassing." "Someday," Amina told her daughter, "you'll understand. Love makes us all a little embarrassing." As night fell over Tolerance, the Morgan family sat together, watching stars emerge in the vast western sky. Somewhere out there, other couples were facing the same struggles they'd faced. But here, now, love had won its long battle. Cole pulled out his old harmonica and began to play. Amina sang along, her voice joining with their children's and friends. The melody drifted over the town, a song of survival, of hope, of ordinary people who'd done extraordinary things for love. In the end, that's all their story was. Two people who'd refused to let the world tell them their love was wrong. They'd paid for that refusal in blood and tears and burned homes. But they'd gained so much more: a family, a community, a future where their children could love freely. As the last notes faded, Hope asked, "Will you tell us the story again? The whole thing, from the beginning?" Cole and Amina exchanged smiles. "Well," Amina began, "it started in a dusty town called Dust Hollow, where your daddy first walked into Murphy's saloon. And so the story passed on, from one generation to the next. A reminder that love, real love, brave love, defiant love, could conquer even the harshest frontier. The stars wheeled overhead, infinite and eternal, blessing the little town where differences were celebrated, where love was just love, where the curves of the road had led, finally, to home." Thank you all for listening to this tale from the Wild West. I'd love to know where in the world you're hearing this story. Drop a comment below and let's connect across the miles, just like Cole and Amina connected across differences. If you enjoyed this story of love conquering prejudice on the frontier, please subscribe to Wild West Campfire for more tales that warm the heart and stir the soul. Share your thoughts about Cole and Amina's journey. What part touched you most? Until next time, partners, keep riding toward the sunset of your dreams.